Neural control of digestion. So nervous system sends nerves to different parts of the gastrointestinal tract. So we can say that the gut wall of higher animals is innervated by nerves from the nervous system, and they can be divided into two categories, the intrinsic nerves and the extrinsic nerves. The extrinsic nerves, they are coming as branches of the autonomic nervous system, which consists of two subdivisions, that is the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So they make up the extrinsic nerves. And intrinsic nerves, they form enteric nervous system. This consists of nerve plexi, or a group of neurons we can call them. They are consisting of about 100 million neurons. So they form plexi or networks in different areas of the gastrointestinal tract. So they are called as the intrinsic nerves. Extrinsic nerves are branches of autonomic nervous system, whereas the intrinsic nerves, they form nerve plexi in tissues of the gastrointestinal tract itself. So first we go to the intrinsic nerves. The intrinsic nerve network has two components. One is called as the myenderic plexus, which is also called as the Auerbach's plexus, and the second one is the submucosal plexus. The myenderic plexus, it is located between the circular and the longitudinal muscles in the gut wall, because the gut wall, it is made up of 4 layers. They are the serosa, the muscularis, which consists of a longitudinal muscle layer, a circular muscle layer, then the submucosa, and the inner lining is called as the mucosa. So these are the layers of the gastrointestinal tract, and the first one, that is the myenderic plexus or the Auerbach's plexus, is located between the circular and the longitudinal muscle layer. The Meissner's plexus or the submucosal plexus is a group of neurons which are located in the submucosa, and the functions also differ. The neurons of the myenderic plexus control the movements of the muscles on the gut wall, that is, they control the peristaltic movements of the gut, whereas the submucosal plexus, it controls gut secretions and local blood flow. So here in this diagram we can see these are the group of neurons which are located in between the circular and the longitudinal muscle layer, and they form the myenderic or the Auerbach's plexus. And down below you can see another group of neurons which is called as the submucosal plexus or the Meissner's plexus. And when you closely look at the arrangement of the neurons, we can see that they are interconnected to each other, that is, they form synapses with each other. The neurons of one plexus will synapse with the neurons of the same plexus, and also you can see that the neurons of one plexus will form synapses with the neurons of another plexus also. So this forms the enteric nerve network. Now there is an extrinsic nerve supply which is coming from the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. So you can see that in the longitudinal muscle layer there is a sympathetic network as well as a parasympathetic nerve network, and similarly in the submucosa also there are sympathetic nerves innervating as well as the parasympathetic nerves. So this forms the extrinsic nerve supply to the gastrointestinal tract. And another important feature which you can notice is that this is a synapse where a neuron of a nerve plexus is synapsing with a parasympathetic nerve fiber, and here you can see a neuron of this plexus synapsing with a parasympathetic nerve fiber. So they are completely interconnected. Now here you can see another network, that is, here are the receptors. So this is the mucosal layer or the epithelial layer where there will be receptors which will respond to some irritant substances in the gut or some abnormal activity in the gut. So these messages will be sent by these receptors through afferent neurons to the higher areas of the nervous system, that is to the prevertebral ganglia of the sympathetic nervous system. Some messages will be sent to the spinal cord, and some others will be sent to the brain stem. So that depends upon the type of stimulus that is being initiated, and according to the stimulus, the relevant areas, that is either the prevertebral ganglia or the spinal cord or the brain stem, releases motor signals to the effector tissues or cells. So these can be considered to be the sensory neurons which take information from the gut to the various regions of the central nervous system. Now we are discussing about the enteric nerve plexus, that is the organization of the neurons in the plexus. So as I told you earlier, they can be seen in different ways, that is they are seen innervating the muscles and the glands. The myendric plexus innervates the muscles and the submucosal plexus innervates the glands. They are also seen to synapse with other neurons of the same plexus. They are seen to synapse with other neurons of other plexi. They also synapse with the nerve endings of the extrinsic nerves, that means the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nerves. So from here you can see that there are connections established between the nerve plexi as well as the autonomic nervous system, that is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. There are connections established. So here from it we can assume that the enteric nerve plexi can work on their own, but they are also influenced by the extrinsic nerves. And the enteric nerve plexi, how do they bring about the sufficient changes? They release neurotransmitters such as acetylcholine, norepinephrine, dopamine, bombacin, CCK or cholecystokinin, vasoactive inhibitory peptide or VIP, somatostatin, etc. So it is with the help of these neurotransmitters that the desirable changes, the desired changes are brought about in gastrointestinal functions. So this is the way in which the enteric nerves or the nerve plexi exercise their effect on gastrointestinal tract activity. Now coming to the extrinsic nerve supply. So this is being supplied by the autonomic nervous system, which has got two components, that is the parasympathetic as well as the sympathetic nervous systems. And these two nerves, they innervate in involuntary organs of the body. They innervate the glands as well as the involuntary organs of the body and control their activity. And the notable thing is that they are antagonistic in their activity. If parasympathetic activates an organ, sympathetic will inactivate it. If sympathetic activates an organ, parasympathetic will inactivate it. So they are kind of antagonistic in activity, and thereby they make an organ function normal. So one thing we have to take into notice is that usually the parasympathetic nerves activate gastrointestinal functions, or they enhance functions, whereas the sympathetic will inhibit gastrointestinal functions. And so that is how they differ. Parasympathetic usually enhance gastrointestinal functions, and they enhance the activity of the enteric nervous system, whereas sympathetic nerve fibers inhibit gastrointestinal functions and they inhibit the activity of the enteric nerves. There is a difference regarding their supply also. The parasympathetic nerves are supplied mostly to esophagus, stomach, pancreas, the enteric nerve plexi, the lower parts of the large intestine, rectum and the anus. Whereas the sympathetic nerve fibers innervate almost all parts of the gastrointestinal tract. So here you can see that the upper as well as the lower parts of the gastrointestinal tract are richly supplied with parasympathetic nerves, but the sympathetic nerves innervate almost all parts of the gastrointestinal tract. The parasympathetic nerve fibers release usually acetylcholine at their synapses, which will increase gastrointestinal functions, whereas the sympathetic nerve endings release norepinephrine, which is inhibitory in action. But the same neurotransmitter in heart tissue will be activating. In heart tissue, the sympathetic nerve fibers are activating, whereas the parasympathetic nervous system is inhibiting. But in the case of gastrointestinal activity, it is parasympathetic which is the activator generally. Now, so the sympathetic is a strong inhibitor, that if there is strong stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system, it can even inhibit the motor movements of the gut, so that it can even block the movement of food through the gastrointestinal tract. So sympathetic nervous system is inhibitory in action, and thus together they will regulate and coordinate the motor activity in the gastrointestinal tract. And apart from this, there is one more thing, that is how the nervous system regulates the gastrointestinal tract activity. That is, just like there is a pacemaker in the heart which initiates the heartbeat, there is a region in the stomach. It is there in the stomach which is called as pacemaker. It is located in the longitudinal muscles of the upper stomach. So it is at this place that an excitatory wave originates. And it is this excitatory wave that will determine the rhythm of gastric movements. It will determine the rhythm of gastric muscle movements, and thereby it will determine the frequency of gastric contraction. So this rhythm, it is called as basic electrical rhythm, and this is being initiated in a pacemaking tissue located in the longitudinal muscles of the upper stomach. Apart from this, there are certain sensory or afferent nerve fibers which will carry information from the gut to the nervous system. And they send messages to various parts. So some stimuli will be very local. These stimuli will be going only to the enteric nerve plexi, which are already there in the submucosa or the muscle layer. So the stimulus sent will be local, but other stimuli will be sent to sympathetic ganglia, to the spinal cord, as well as to the brain stem. So the response is created by the enteric nerve plexi. The response is created between the afferent nerve fibers, the enteric nerve plexi, and thereafter the motor signals which originate, they form only a short circuit. Whereas if the afferent nerve fibers send stimuli to sympathetic ganglia or spinal cord or the brain stem, the motor signals which they give off will be long circuit. And how are these sensory nerve fibers stimulated? If there is an irritation of the gut mucosa, if there is excessive distension or elongation of the gut muscles, that will stimulate the sensory nerve fibers, or the presence of specific chemical substances in the gut. So all these are stimuli for the afferent nerve fibers to send signals to either enteric nerve plexi or sympathetic ganglia or spinal cord or brain stem. And the reflexes, as I told you earlier, are either short circuit reflexes or long circuit reflexes, depending upon to which part are the sensory signals sent. And these signals transmitted through the fibers can either bring about an excitatory reflex or an inhibitory reflex, thereby bringing about either an enhancement of intestinal activity or an inhibition of gastrointestinal activity. So once again we go to the gastrointestinal reflexes. I told you there are short circuit and long circuit reflexes. The short circuit reflexes are integrated within gut and the nerve plexi. So signals will be sent from afferent nerve fibers of the gut to the plexi, and the plexi give necessary signals to the effector tissues or the effector organs, and thereby the reflex arc or the reflex action is localized in the gut itself. So that is why it is called as a short circuit reflex. The examples are gastrointestinal secretion, peristalsis, mixing contractions, etc. They are all examples of short circuit reflexes. So here in the diagram we can see a short circuit reflex where a receptor located in the gut will send a sensory impulse to the nerve plexus, which is also located in the gut, which on getting this stimulus will initiate a motor impulse which will reach the effector organ, which is either the muscle or the gland. And depending upon the motor impulse, if it is inhibitory, the muscle will stop contraction. If it is excitatory, the muscle will start contraction. If it is inhibitory, the gland will stop secretion. If it is excitatory, the gland will start secretion. So that is what is called as the response. So this is a short circuit, that is stimulus sent from a receptor present in the gut itself, that is sent to the nerve plexus. The nerve plexus will initiate a motor impulse which will go to the effector organ, which is again located in the gut, and the necessary response is created, either inhibitory or stimulatory. Anyway, the circuit is short circuit. Now, long circuit. There are two categories of long circuit reflexes. One is from the gut to the sympathetic ganglia, that is, there are ganglia which are very close to the vertebral column, and they are sympathetic ganglia because they are part of the sympathetic nervous system. So some of the afferent nerve fibers send signals to the sympathetic ganglia, they will send motor impulses to some effector organ in the gastrointestinal tract, and thereby some movements will be controlled, like the gastrocolic reflex. That is, it is a signal initiating from the stomach. So it's a sensory signal initiating from the stomach that will go to the prevertebral sympathetic ganglia. A motor impulse will be initiated by them, and that will reach the colon, which will now lead to evacuation. That means the contents in the colon will be emptied. So the signal is sent by the stomach. So that is the receptor. The prevertebral sympathetic ganglia will coordinate the motor impulse. It will collect the sensory impulse and it will initiate the motor impulse that will go to the effector, that is the colon, and it starts evacuation. So that is called as the gastrocolic reflex. There are other reflexes like enterogastric reflexes between the colon and small intestine to inhibit. So that is initiated by the colon and the small intestine, and that will inhibit the stomach motility and stomach secretion. So here colon and small intestine are the receptors on colon and small intestine. They send signals, and the effectors are the muscles and glands on the stomach, which will stop their activity. So that is called enterogastric reflex. And there is yet another reflex initiated from receptors in the colon, which will lead to emptying of the ileal contents into the colon. So here the receptors on colon will send sensory signals, and the effectors are located in the ileum. Thereby the contents of the ileum are discharged into the colon. So that is called as colono-ileal reflex. So that is a long circuit reflex. There is still a longer circuit which is initiated from the gut, which will go to the spinal cord or the brainstem and then back to the gastrointestinal tract. That is, there are certain reflexes which originate from the stomach and the duodenum. They go to the brainstem. The brainstem will initiate motor impulses, and these motor impulses are sent to the stomach, thereby controlling the stomach motility, the gastric motility, as well as gastric secretion. Another category, there will be some pain reflexes initiated by the presence of certain irritant substances or by increased muscular activity. So these pain receptors will send signals to the brainstem or the spinal cord, and they initiate motor impulses which will lead to the lesser secretion of either HCl, which has caused irritation, or it will inhibit the excessive contraction of the muscles, which has actually initiated the pain. And defecation reflexes are other examples of longer circuit reflexes. These reflexes are initiated in the colon and rectum. They go to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord sends motor impulses to the colon, rectal and abdominal muscles. And they produce powerful contractions which will later lead to ejection of feces. So it is called as a defecation reflex. So they all form arcs. An arc which is initiated in a receptor which will go to either the enteric nervous system or the spinal cord or the ganglia or the brainstem, and they initiate a motor impulse which will go to the effector organ. So it is like a reflex arc, and they can either be short circuit or long circuit. So here you can see a long circuit reflex, that is, a stimulus is being initiated by a receptor that is sent to the central nervous system. Central nervous system will send a motor impulse which will go to the nerve plexus, and the nerve plexus initiate another set of motor impulses which will go to the effector organ. So this is an example of a long circuit reflex. Now we will take some gastrointestinal functions particularly, and we will see how they are regulated. So first we go to the salivary secretion. The salivary secretion is under the control of a region in the brainstem, and that region is called a superior and inferior salivary nuclei. So these are the superior and the inferior salivary nuclei located in the brainstem. It is located near to the pons region. So it is in this region that the signals for salivation are initiated. So salivation is under the control of these two nuclei, which are called as superior and inferior salivary nuclei of the brainstem, and this effect is given through sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve fibers. So what happens is that if the certain chemicals in the food will stimulate chemoreceptors in the taste buds, there are chemoreceptors in the taste buds which respond to certain chemicals. These signals from the chemoreceptors of the tongue are sent to the salivary nuclei located in the brain through sensory nerve fibers. The salivary nuclei in turn send motor impulses through the parasympathetic nerve fibers because they are the activators. And this will lead to vasodilation, that is dilation of blood vessels in the salivary glands, which will finally lead to the secretion of saliva. So the receptors send signals to the brain sends motor impulses to the glands or salivary glands, and saliva will be secreted, and the mediators are the parasympathetic nerve fibers. They are the enhancers, whereas if it is through sympathetic, it will be inhibitor. The secretion of saliva is also stimulated by certain other factors apart from this nervous stimulation, that is nausea. It can initiate salivation. Some gastrointestinal reflexes also initiate salivation, and there are yet another factors such as sleep, dehydration, etc., which will reduce salivation. We can see that during dehydration, the salivary activity is less. During sleep, we produce less saliva, and when we are in a dehydrated condition, the salivation will be reduced. So this will lead to dryness in the mouth, and it will lead to thirst, and we drink water, and the dehydration or the loss of water is now compensated for by drinking water. So this is also a kind of reflex action. Now the gastric secretion, it is also under the control of hormones as well as neural control, and there are three phases of gastric secretion. One is called the cephalic phase, second is the gastric phase, and third is the intestinal phase. Cephalic phase, it starts when food is inside our mouth. Gastric phase starts when food enters the stomach. Intestinal phase starts when the food is reaching the upper portion of the small intestine. So we first go to cephalic phase. Even when you get the sight of food or the smell or thought or taste of food, it is a stimulus to the gastric glands. So there will be initiation of gastric secretion or gastric juice secretion. If we have a greater appetite, the stimulation will be still higher, and these signals are initiated in the cerebral cortex of the brain, and there are other regions of the brain called amygdala, hypothalamus, etc. They all control gastric secretion. So so gastric secretion itself is initiated in the cephalic phase even when the food is in our mouth. This accounts only for 20% of gastric secretion. The second phase is prominent, that occurs when the food enters the stomach. There will be initiation of some short and long circuit reflexes which will cause the secretion of gastric juice, and that accounts for majority of total gastric secretion, that is 70% of gastric secretion is initiated by these reflexes when food enters the stomach. So gastric phase is prominent. Third is intestinal phase. The presence of food in the upper portion of the small intestine, especially when the food reaches the duodenum, it will continue to cause stomach secretion. That is, small amounts of gastric juice will still be produced because the duodenal mucosa, it is the duodenal mucosa which secretes gastrin, and gastrin is a hormone that promotes gastric secretion. So for a small period of time, that is only 10% of gastric secretion is being accounted for by this particular mechanism. So the intestinal phase of gastric secretion accounts for only 10% of gastric secretion. Majority occurs in this phase. So these are the three phases where we can see that there is involvement of the cerebral cortex, the amygdala, hypothalamus, as well as the short and long circuit reflexes which we mentioned earlier. Now the pancreatic secretion. A secretion of pancreatic juice is stimulated by parasympathetic nerve fibers through vagus nerve. As I already told you, parasympathetic increases gastrointestinal activity. Secretion of bile by the liver is also stimulated by the parasympathetic nerve fibers, again through the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. But sympathetic stimulation can decrease bile production. It is parasympathetic nerve stimulation that increases bile production. Intestinal secretion is under the control of short circuit local neural reflexes rather than long circuit reflexes. It is the activity of the intestinal glands to produce intestinal juices, succus entericus, is somewhat local in action. So by all these we can see that it is the parasympathetic nervous system which increases the activity of gastrointestinal organs.